In this video, I'll look at a document folder from 1917 that stored technical diagrams for cable wiring. Can we make one today, and would it be useful? Imagine it's the end of the 20th century and a young dazzer gets a job which involves a bit of travel. He's sent off to the South Pole to get hero shots, to install equipment which is part of a neutrino telescope. This involves a lot of cables. Hundreds of cables from sensors in the glacial ice which connect to dozens of computers which have thousands of their own cables. Keeping track of all these cables is only possible thanks to documentation. The 20th century was peak paper. When all the information we needed was on paper, we had ingenious ways of storing and protecting these documents. There were countless storage methods developed and marketed for so many different uses. These wiring diagrams from 1917 are stored in a wraparound folder made of what feels like a type of oiled card. The use of split paper fasteners means anyone could install the diagrams or change them. The expanding design means the same folder could be used for a few pages or many dozen. The wraparound 4-edge flap provides protection when thrown into a toolbox. It's a great simple design. Can we make our own today? A nice feature of the 21st century is that it's always been in colour. Let's pull this old folder apart and see how it's made. This had to happen anyway because the fasteners have rusted and they'll continue to damage the object. Unfortunately, they have to go and be replaced. It really is a simple design. The card material is folded to produce two short stubs which have holes protected with eyelets in each stub, and the documents with corresponding holes are placed between the stubs, and everything is held in place with split paper fasteners. Cleaning rust stains is extremely difficult and problematic. For items of low financial, historical and personal value, I use the slightly destructive method of using a mildly abrasive eraser to clean surface rust off the card. It's important to get rid of any tiny particles of rust. Only use this method if you think you know what you're doing and don't mention it to a conservator. And if you have any doubts, don't do it. Just brush the surface with a stiff bristle brush. Before moving on, thoroughly clean your work area so rust particles don't get onto other jobs. I should emphasise, I'm only removing surface rust and the stains in the paper remain. Luckily they're minor in this case. Any safe for the paper chemical treatment of rust stains is beyond the capability of the home bindery. The first thing I'll do is measure the historic example. I'm sure doing this will help me size a new version for something I've printed on modern sized paper. Starting at the 4-edge flap, the first interesting thing is the 3 creases that allow the folder to expand. The small number of original drawings didn't need either of these, but each expansion is 7mm wide, allowing the storage of a wad of documents up to 14mm or 5/8 of an inch thick. The stubs are made with 2 folds, with the inner widest section allowing the spine to expand for thicker collections of documents, and the outer being roughly a safe width for securing the eyelets. These are 14 and 24mm, or about 1 inch and 5/8 of an inch. I sort of expected that the spine would have the same parallel folds as the 4-edge to allow for expansion. Instead, there's a single fold with the stub pieces being symmetric around this fold. I think the reason for this becomes obvious when we make it. The eyelets in the original are scored types which spread out when compressed, splitting in the process. The other type of eyelets have rolled edges, and the pros and cons of each is for another day. These days you use what you can find, and what you'll mostly find today is grommets. Did you know the difference between an eyelet and a grommet is that an eyelet is a single piece, while a grommet has 2 parts and includes a backing washer? Grommets roughly the same size as the eyelets will work fine. I've been wanting to print out a copy of an historic Hickok catalogue for some time. It's in a landscape format which is perfect for this folder. I printed it on A5 paper, which is larger than the old example I'm copying, but not too much. I used short grain paper, which will help with opening. The original has holes 70mm apart, which is a standard spacing for ring binders, and so is 80mm, and since I'm using a larger paper, I went with the 80mm. I used my paper drill to make the holes, but you could use an ordinary desk hole punch and make the holes in multiple batches. To accommodate the larger paper, I decided I only needed to make two adjustments, the height and the width of the two larger panels. The original had 3mm squares top and bottom, and I maintained this and add 6mm to the 149 to give a new height of 155mm. The new paper is 210mm wide, and if you'd think about it hard enough, you'd realise that the large panels need to be a bit larger than the width of the paper. I don't know what I was thinking, but I reduced it slightly to 205. You'll notice that the front cover is a little short once it's finished. If you make one, add 5mm, not subtract. I don't know what I was thinking because I used 215 in the prototype and it was good. The prototype had another major flaw, otherwise I'd have just swapped it in, you wouldn't have noticed. And I was done with making this folder, so you get the slightly short one, which still functions fine. For the covering material, I'm using 160 GSM elephant paper. It's a bit lighter than the original, but I like the look of it, and it's highly calendared, which makes it feel like the original. I don't know much about this paper or light card, except I buy it from Carly Anderson in Sydney, and there's a link in the video description. I cut a long strip of card from a sheet off camera at my large bench and then transfer all the measurements for the crease locations. The grain direction is head to tail. In older videos, I've been loose with terminology between creasing and scoring. I now know that in commercial work, they're two different things, and creasing is where fibres are compressed or distorted, while with scoring, fibres are cut. In the video where I make a box for a Bible and I partially cut the board before folding it, that's scoring. In this video, I'll only crease, no cutting of fibre. I'll use the creasing jig to make fast work of this job. There's a link in the description to the video where I make this jig. Now the big question is, do you crease on the inside or outside of the fold? In a recent video on the internet, it says you should crease on the outside because the creasing stretches the fibres, making them longer and better suited to going around the larger outside radius. Despite agreeing with this in principle, I'm going to do the opposite mostly. I'll get back to why I do this in a minute. Now we'll see why there's a single fold at the spine instead of the three at the foredge. At the foredge, the back fold lines up with the back sheet of paper. As you add more paper, it builds up from the back, not symmetrically from the centre. But at the spine, you want the holes symmetric from the centre, so they remain aligned. It's easier to have just a single fold at the spine and let it expand symmetrically. The downside is there's no flat surface to put a label on the spine. I did think about customizing the folder for the exact thickness of the Hickok catalogue and having a flat panel at the spine for a label. This makes punching the holes in the stubs more difficult as they can't be held together to punch through both at once. You could punch the holes in each stub separately, but I wanted to stick to the original design. I used the front page of the catalogue to mark the hole locations, which ensures everything is aligned. Finding small eyelets was a bit harder than expected. The Australian chain that shall not be named had kits of small grommets, but the local store was out of the kit with the setters. From the store of last resort, I got a Chinese-made copy of a traditional paper eyelet tool, which came with some very cheap eyelets, which felt like coated aluminium. For $20, it's hard to expect much. It does work fine, but I also picked up a vintage B. Lawrence Stationery Company eyelet tool that, despite its obvious age, did a very clean job of installing the new eyelets, better than the new tool. It's missing its spring, so you have to pry it open, and it's a bit rusty, but it also cost $20, which I felt like was a better deal. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any vintage eyelets to install with it. Okay, back to the question of creasing on the inside or outside and why I did the opposite of what I saw on the internet. I think the crease on the outside applies when creasing against a hard surface where the fibres on the opposite side are left mostly unchanged. I'm using a creasing jig which has a groove underneath the card and the other side of the card is pushed down into the groove, also stretching the fibres on the outside. When using the creasing jig, I think it's better to crease on the inside as the fibres are not only stretched but pushed outwards, meaning they won't bunch up as much on the inside of the fold. The reality is that the distortion of the fibres means the card will want to fold at the crease line and will do so in either direction. This is why I don't flip the card and crease from the other side where the fold is in the opposite direction. I crease on what will be the inside of the majority of the folds. I'll continue to research this as creasing, scoring and die cutting is a huge business, and I'm sure there's some good resources on the subject for me to yet discover. Stay tuned for updates. The original split paper fasteners were completely rusted and couldn't be reinstalled. I was able to get new ones from the big Australian office supply chain. These also felt like coloured aluminium, which is fine, and I used them for the Hickok catalogue. But I did find some vintage Australian-made solid brass ones, which I used to put the original folder back together again. Installing the pages was very straightforward. Put them in position and push a paper fastener through each hole and spread them apart at the back. Nothing more to it. A few final adjustments and round the corners, and all that's left to do is put a label on the front. I like how the original had the title printed on the folder. It must have been a pain in the neck to feed the long piece of card into the printing press. I'm sure they didn't do a lot of them. I didn't feel like setting the title up in type and inking up a press for a single folder, so I printed a label on an inkjet. In past videos, you may have seen me make little guides to ensure I position labels on the front of books squarely and centered. Putting the label on was the last job of the project and the last job of the day, and I was getting lazy and decided to skip using a guide, and that's why it ended up slightly crooked. There's a lesson there for all of us, but especially me. If you have any questions, the first place to check is in the video description. This is a simple project, but I've enjoyed revisiting my youth when everything came with paper documentation, and there was a surprising amount to learn about eyelets and grommets, and finding the vintage eyelet tool was a real bonus. Now I just need a box of vintage eyelets to go with it. I hope you've found this nostalgic journey interesting too. Until next time, cheerio.